and welcome to In the Cool of the Day and today's segment of People Connecting People. I'm your host, Ruth Pegeron. I have a special show for you today. My guest has owned her business since 2015. Her company is part of a nationwide network of franchises that specialize in helping seniors and their families find safe and appropriate assisted living, memory care, independent living, and in-home care options. A native of Washington, D.C., she has been proud to call Fairfax County home for nearly 27 years. She especially appreciates the opportunity to help seniors in the county, where she is a member of the 50-plus Senior Ambassador Program and also serves on the Housing Committee for the county's ongoing SHAPE initiative, which is basically a multifaceted strategic plan to make the county a better place for seniors to age and thrive. Coming from a large family, she has answered the calls of loved ones as they confront the many challenges to aging. When she is not working, she is an active member of the Alfred Street Baptist Church and the crew of Priros in its various community service initiatives in the DMV and Louisiana areas. So please welcome Senior Care Consultant and owner of CarePatrol of Northern Virginia, Robin T. Edwards.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, and thank you for being here, Robin. I really appreciate you taking the time to tell us a little bit more about your services, but I also want to talk about you. So if you can just, I know I said a few things about what you do, but anything else you would like to share, just who Robin is. We'd like to open with that. You're welcome.
Well, thank you for having me, and I appreciate the great introduction.
Yes.
I am, as you said, I'm a native of Washington. I was born and raised in D.C., went to Catholic schools, graduated from Howard University. Previously, I spent the bulk of my career as a journalist throughout the country. I worked for newspapers throughout the country, and until I made the shift into the senior care industry, I was a communications director for a national trade association. And then I decided to pivot in 2014, and I've been doing this ever since.
Oh, that's wonderful. So big switch from journalism to senior care. So tell us, is there a reason why? Like, what birthed that in you?
So this is a clear case of life happening on the way to your plans.
Yes.
I had intended to stay in journalism, but the company I was with for 18 years decided to restructure. So I found myself in the position of having to push the reset button. And during that discovery process of figuring out my new why, I came across this company, this opportunity to start my own company, and I discovered CarePatrol working with a franchise coach. And I loved the idea, the whole concept of helping seniors, and it's a service in which we don't charge families for what we do, and that really appealed to me.
Oh, wonderful. That is just wonderful, because CarePatrol, I love the name, first and foremost, because that's what it's about with seniors and helping them find housing is you're patrolling, like you're protecting them, you're patrolling their care. So the name is very attractive to me. Recareering is sometimes very difficult.
Oh, yes.
So I'm just curious, did you ever look back and say, oh, I want to go back to journalism once you bought your franchise?
Absolutely not. I looked at it as this way. When I left that company, I walked out with a lot of awards. I had done very well. I was very successful. But what I discovered when I was going through that rediscovery process of trying to figure out my next opportunity, I said to myself, this is the fourth quarter. I want to do something different. It was no longer about climbing the corporate ladder for me personally. I wanted to give back to the community, and that's what I'm doing. I love it, and this is my new why.
Oh, that's wonderful. And so tell us a little bit about the specific services you offer as CarePatrol franchise owner.
So CarePatrol has been around 30 years, and specifically what we do is when families find that home is no longer safe for a senior, what we do is consult. We provide expert guidance and counsel to help them navigate the puzzle of complexities when it comes to finding the right care option. Maybe it is good to stay in the home, and maybe they just need in-home care. But maybe they can't sustain that senior safely in the home using that service. So we might need to enlarge the circle of care and look for assisted living. And so what I do is I will meet with the families. We have those courageous conversations, oftentimes around the kitchen table, and talk about what's important to that senior. We have like 71 questions that we ask them to try to understand what are the healthcare needs that I need to be aware of, what are their financial requirements, their preferences, what is it they like to do, what they don't like, and also, you know, the big question, the big elephant in the room is what can they afford? And in addition to that, it's also help connecting them to other resources. Right. It may be an elder law attorney or something else, because it is a puzzle of complexity. So I'm always working with elder law attorneys, care managers, other people that in community resources that could help make a solution a viable one for that family.
And when you mentioned the 71 questions and meeting with them at the kitchen table, it makes it very comfortable. At that kitchen table, are there children involved? Is it spouses? Is
Almost
it just
always the adult children are involved. On a case-by-case basis, the senior will be involved. As you can imagine, seniors are sometimes reluctant.
Yes.
They don't want to do this, but the children see there's warning signs that maybe mom's not safe at home. And there's several that, you know, we educate and advocate like things to watch for. Is she paying her bills? Is she able to, you know, manage her medications? She's starting to wander from home. And then we may have that conversation just with the adult children, but there are other times when we will include the senior in that conversation because we want them to be a part of the decision-making process as much as possible because the decision affects them ultimately. And we want to make sure they're part of that conversation when and if warranted.
Right. Now, you mentioned staying at home. Yeah, that's everybody's first option.
Yep.
And I know that's yours.
Yep.
You know, you want everyone to stay at home and then help them there. And then you said assisted living. What other options are out there if it's a little bit more? I've heard of like independent living.
There's independent living.
Okay. And what is that? Like,
so independent living is just as it implies.
Okay.
The benefit of independent living, I say for seniors, especially those transitioning from home, is that they get the opportunity. And a lot of times with seniors, they're living by themselves. They're elder orphans in many cases, where they're by themselves. Their adult children have moved away. A spouse maybe has passed away, and they need some socialization. They need something to do with their days, and they maybe not driving anymore. So going into independent living gives them a chance to thrive in a setting with like-minded people, socialize. Some of the independent communities offer meals.
Oh, okay.
And then also there's Independent Plus, which is something that some of the communities in independent settings have contracted with home care agencies. So they're kind of on call for those independent seniors when they just may need a little bit of help every now and then, but not on a consistent basis.
So the plus is usually customized to the person, or is it usually?
Yeah, it's customized to the resident in the setting.
Okay, so that could be like something like laundry, or
it could be help me with the remote finding my channel. It could be a variety of things.
Okay.
It's usually it's certain increments that they can provide a service. It could be helping with laundry or to help me tie my shoe. I can't do that, or you know, with an errand.
Oh, errands, yeah, that's a big one. You know, just getting out and socialize. Yeah. Socializing inside is one thing, but
being able to take care of business, or can you help me with this or that? Yeah.
Okay, perfect, got it. Now, what's memory care? I understand that that's also
memory
has
care,
a definition.
There's of course a big demand for that.
Okay.
Memory care is when a senior needs to be in a safe setting, a secured setting. And usually memory care, there are a lot of people with dementia in assisted living. Usually memory care is required if they're exit-seeking or they start to wander, or if there's behavioral disturbances where they may have acts of aggression or things like that. Let's say they get dehydrated and they have some, you know, issues kind of managing their thought processes and things. They get confused. So memory care is a good setting for them in that they have the benefit of memory care programming, specially trained staff to help with cueing. And if there are some behavioral disturbances, knowing how to manage that appropriately.
Okay, so those 71 questions kind of help you decide on what should be best for them.
Sometimes if someone gets a diagnosis with dementia, the family will immediately say, oh, mom needs to go to memory care. Not necessarily.
Not necessarily, that's true. Yeah, that the diagnosis doesn't mean that level of care.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, you talked about the elephant in the room, which is cost. So of the independent plus, independent, memory care, assisted living, all of the options, what's the average cost today for any of those communities?
Now, that's always a $1,000 question.
Yes.
Because when you see costs, people always want to know, well, how much is it going to cost?
Right.
And I never have, a one shop all answer for them, because it's broken down into several different factors. One, where do you want to live? The cost for, the actual place kind of mirrors the real estate market. The closer you are to DC and the nation's capital, that cost can be higher. You go further out, maybe Prince William County, some of those other areas in Virginia, it may be less expensive. So one, location.
Location is
Two, what do you want? Do you want a 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom? Would you do a studio? All those things factor into cost.
Yeah.
And then the other thing, the major consideration is, what are their care needs?
Okay.
Those care needs, when you add that to the cost of the room and where you're staying, that the care needs are assessed prior to the resident moving in, and that's another level that I wouldn't be able to determine. The facilities determine that.
Okay. So those three things are pretty loaded. Number one is the choice of where do I want to go? Where do I want to go?
Right.
Do you find that most people want to just stay maybe in their community in which they've had their home, or does it really matter much?
Sometimes they're willing to venture out. Usually they want to stay close to home and what they're familiar with.
When you say they're familiar with, though, you mean like the area and the community?
The area. A lot of times their doctors are in those areas. The
that
doctors,
makes a good point.
Their friends, their church,
yeah.
place of worship. So ideally, as a starting point, we'll try to focus on the areas that they want, but there may not be the appropriate place based on what their care needs are. So we may have to expand that search, outside of their, desired place for what's appropriate for their level of care.
Okay. So from the point of view meeting someone to the point that they move in, what's the average time that relationship fosters?
The relationship fosters?
Yeah, so you might meet someone today and they say, I'm independent living. Well, it takes about 3 months to find the right place, or some people a lot sooner? Or?
Because CarePatrol spends a lot of time when we in the community pre-screening these providers, we kind of know who can do what. Okay. So a lot of factors go into, like, okay, how long will this process takes? We never go into the home and say, come on, we're going to sell you this place. You got to go now.
Yes.
No, we kind of move at the family's pace or the senior's pace. We want to make sure the senior feels like they're in the driver's seat.
Yes.
That said, we do try to keep the process moving forward as much as possible. So when we meet with them, we'll show them the options. And then the key, a lot of times with seniors, because they've lived in that house many years and they have a lot of stuff, the idea of moving and what am I going to do with all this stuff is overwhelming. So connecting them with resources to make that easier, because that's what is usually a big hurdle for them as they're trying to think through, well, what am I going to do with all my stuff and how I can't do, it'll take me years to get through this.
Right.
So my process in terms of working with them depends. If they're coming from home, it can take a little bit longer, maybe a week, a couple months, or years.
Right. Okay.
If they're coming out of hospital or clinical settings, I mean, we don't have the luxury of time. We're moving quickly. So it can be a matter of a couple of days.
Wow. Thank you so much. Well, we're going to go to break. It's time for a short break, and we will return after these important messages.
Here's something we bet you didn't know. Nearly half of all cancers can be prevented, mostly by making changes in your diet, controlling your weight, and of course, by not smoking. Visit prevent50.org and get a free 30-day planner filled with tips, recipes, and more.
Welcome back. You are watching In the Cool of the Day, and today's segment of People Connecting People with my special guest, Robin T. Edwards, Senior Care Consultant and owner of CarePatrol of Northern Virginia. Prior to the break, we were discussing how people what communities you help them and what the definition of communities are. I know you mentioned that the average cost just depends on location and care, and it's very individual. It's kind of it's like buying a house. It's even like apartment searching. Everything is very, very individual. is more expensive closer to DC and going in the suburbs a little bit less. So it is pretty hard to give an average monthly cost. I understand that. But when you work with a family and you're helping them navigate this and helping them decide, I am curious to know, like, there's a lot of newer communities that are coming up. I mean, there's a lot, and they're beautiful. I've personally done tours. I'm single, I don't have children, I have nieces, and I tell them, I went into one community and called them. I said, look, if I have to go somewhere, this one is okay. It's very nice. It was absolutely beautiful. But there's still a lot of older communities that, may not be as beautiful, if you will. Can you help us understand, like, the difference between the newer ones versus some of the older ones that's been around a while?
Sure. There are quite a few that have been here a long time, and their basic services are the same. I think the big difference are the amenities. The newer ones have a lot more bells and whistles. They can have, bars and pool rooms, and some of them have little therapy pools, and they're stunning. They're like more like being on a luxury cruise line ship in terms of what they offer in terms of amenities. The more traditional ones do have some things that make them unique as well. But at the end of the day, it's about the care and what that senior needs for their care services. That's always what's the most important thing, not how pretty it is. And also, I find after years of doing this and seeing hundreds of communities, it's about the people. It's about the administrator or the executive director and the staff. When we look at communities and we pre-screen them and start learning about them, we want to see if there are a lot of turnover of staff, or do they have a history of a lot of deficiencies? How well are they managing the care of the residents? And when we go with families on tours, we give them a tour guide, and we give them some tips of things that we want who's ever touring with us to observe. Are the residents well kept? We want them to use all their senses. Are there any smells that you find undesirable? It doesn't matter whether the building's old or the building's brand new. The key thing is just use all your senses. Make sure you're focusing, you ask the right questions. And that's what CarePatrol tries to help them do. Ask the right questions. Can my loved one's needs be met in this setting? And then working with them to, make sure that they can care for them long term, so the need to move won't arise should something happen in the future. Ultimately, they can, live in place and age there until, time of death.
Okay. So the tour is a key part of this process as well.
Oh, it's critical.
It's critical.
Once we've identified, we usually try to give the family a couple of choices, and then we'll arrange tours so that they can go and start learning about these communities, asking questions. We want to make sure that vetting process is very thorough. So we want you not only to talk to the marketer, but also talk to other folks on the staff, so you have a really good sense of what you're walking into.
Okay. Now, lifestyle is very important, and you've mentioned that several times as it relates to the newer versus the old one. But and lifestyle is also important to the part of that 71 questions of what do they like. So do you find that when they're on the tours, they're looking more for lifestyle options? So even pets, I know a lot of places have there's pet friendly. Do you find that even pets are welcome in places or important to your clients?
In some cases they are. Most people that have had a long time pet, it's, of course they want to bring them with them. So, we're making sure we understand, well, what's the cost to have that pet? Is there a fee upon entry, or is there a monthly fee? And then the key consideration for the community is, can that senior take care of that pet?
Okay, that was going to be my follow-up question. Do they have staff that helps with pets?
Well, staff doesn't. So in some cases it may be, well, let's identify some community resources that can come in and maybe do the dog walking and help that senior manage them.
Right.
And seeing if the community is open to that. Some of them are pretty strict about the rules, making sure that the senior themselves can actually manage and take care of the pet.
Okay, but there are pet-friendly.
Yeah, most of them are.
Okay.
Most of them are.
Really?
Yeah.
That's good to hear, because I know that's very important for a lot of people.
Oh, yeah.
Pets are very much a part of the family.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's good to know. Is there, when you're doing the tours, I'm sure that the kids are involved, everyone's involved. And do you find that there's a difference of opinion with the senior wants versus what the rest of the family wants, or they usually come together and decide?
It varies. Usually, the seniors are they kind of get a good sense of what they want. And ultimately they have to live there. With all the other variables that come into play, kind of will weigh heavily on what the final decision is. But,
Right.
The senior's in the driver's seat.
Oh,
And if
that's
they can
good.
make everything work, usually they go with what the senior wants
That's
to do.
good. Now, do you ever find, or do you help people in situations where there's a couple, but the care needs are very different?
Oh, yeah.
And they both are going to a place. So how do you help in that situation?
I get a lot of calls from couples.
Okay.
And that's a process that, you have to take baby steps when it's with couples, unless there's a critical need to get someone into another setting. I had a gentleman call me this week. I've talked to him twice now. His wife has advanced Alzheimer's. He's been her caregiver. And so part of our discussion has been, you've been carrying the weight of being her caregiver for several years. And he admitted, I just don't have the bandwidth anymore. We need to decide, hey, we're both going to move somewhere, or something's got to give here because I can't do it anymore. So, yeah, and if that's the case, sometimes I've transitioned couples to a setting where they can both live together, or sometimes it's a matter of just maybe the wife needs to go, or maybe it's identifying in-home care for them. So it's a process. It's not one size fits all answer for that.
Okay. But there are communities that have that kind of setup where both could come. Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
That is good to hear.
Yeah.
Because I know that couples that are together 50 years, 60 years, like this is not a time in their life
They
wanna
don't ever,
separate.
they do not want to
They don't
separate.
wanna
And I've had
separate.
some, cases where the couples are just so close that the spouse without dementia will actually move into the memory care unit with the spouse
wow.
with dementia. They just do not want to be separated under any circumstances.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And that's wonderful, because that means that both of them are getting support. And the one without the memory care, you can still have a life.
Well, the challenge, though, is you don't want the one that doesn't have the cognitive impairment to decline. You need to make sure you're also meeting his needs. So we always try to work with the community so that maybe during the day there's some outlet for him, so that he can also, the other spouse, so that they can also, thrive in that setting and not always be in the role of caregiver 24/7, even in that setting, or feel like they are.
Okay, got it. You mentioned earlier that one of the key things about CarePatrol, and I find it a unique thing, and which is my next question, what's unique? But I think you've already answered one of them, and that is that your services are free, or complimentary, however you want to say that, to the senior and their family that has contacted you. So that is very unique. So how do you, what other services are unique that would make it different for them to contact you? I mean, free is always good, versus them just venturing out on their own trying to do these tours. Sounds like you do a lot of the legwork. Is that?
We do a lot of the legwork, and I think one of the big advantages is that depending on whatever the case is, because CarePatrol is national, and we have I think more than 170 advisors or companies around the country that do this as part of our network. Sometimes the option is to relocate, so we can extend. They can either send them here from other states, or I can transition to maybe lower cost states, and work with advisors there to relocate is one of the big advantages. But I think the big advantage of working with CarePatrol is based on the fact that we're founded on the principles of a little bit different in how we operate. The senior's always first, their care is always first. We don't ever just give a family a random list and hope they go figure it out.
Right.
It's the training that we've had to actually provide expert guidance and expertise and guidance throughout the whole process. So we remain a resource for these families even after they're placed.
Right, that's
and
wonderful.
then our company, CarePatrol, is a network of different types of brands, so we can also connect them. Let's say if somebody needs medical transport across state, CarePatrol is part of a family of companies that
can help with that.
can help with that as well.
Oh, that's wonderful, Robin.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I know of a family that used your services, and I don't remember how she connected with you, but I just was in a different environment, and she was sharing with someone that she moved her parents. She couldn't believe that after her parents had lived in the home, she was raised in the home. She was the only child, that after meeting you, you got them to go to an assisted living. And I was like, wow, really?
Yeah.
She's like, because I've known her for years, and she always told my parents will never leave. They will never leave that house. They'll never leave that house.
We provide tips to even the family about how to approach mom and dad about let's start planting the seeds of moving.
Yeah.
And we kind of coach them about, you become like a salesperson about this idea of moving, because it's so scary to the senior.
It is.
So we give them tips on that. We give them how to have that conversation with mom or dad.
That is wonderful.
So,
I mean, that's a unique service.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that. And thank you so much for sharing. And in our closing, I want you to also share, I know you have a lot of letters. I love letters behind people's names. And I think it's so important when you re-career to go get your certifications and do all the things that matter. Can you just share some of your certifications for our audience?
So the first letter you always see behind any CarePatrol advisor's name is Certified Senior Advisor.
Okay.
That's the most significant one. And with that certification, we sign a code of ethics.
Okay.
And that's kind of the moral compass around which we operate.
Nice.
Also a certified dementia practitioner.
Got it.
And the most recent certification is a certified senior placement and referral specialist.
Wonderful. Thank you. You're awesome, Robin. Thank you for helping so many people in the community. And thank goodness you listened to your re-career call. Yes. So thank you. So, well, it's that time again. If you have any questions about today's segment, please see the information scrolling below. You have been watching In the Cool of the Day and today's segment of People Connecting People. Thanks for watching, and bye-bye.